world leaders and dignitaries from across the globe celebrated Nobel Laureate Professor Wole Soyinka on the occasion of his 90th birthday. The playwright was hailed for his significant accomplishment in nation building and contributions to African literature. Some of his literary work have been adapted into screenplays, including his 1972 book, The Man Died, Prison Notes, a story about his experiences in prison during the Nigerian Civil War. The film was screened to a select few ahead of his birthday to mark the milestone. Well, here is a tribute to the literary icon, Professor Wole Soyinka. Born in Abeokuta on July 13, 1934, this year marks a momentous milestone for the 90-year-old renowned playwright who is also an actor, a hunter, a musician, a human rights and political activist, a global icon, and the first African to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, Professor Wole Soyinka. Soyinka devoted his Nobel acceptance speech in 1986 to the late South African freedom fighter Nelson Mandela as a mark of criticism of apartheid and politics of racial segregation in the country. Soyinka has been a strong critic of successive Nigerian governments and African dictators. He strongly opposed Trump's presidency and destroyed his green card in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. Much of Soyinka's writing is concerned with the oppressive boot and the irrelevance of the color of the foot that it wears. His body of work includes The Interpreters, his debut novel that was published in 1965, and the play Death of the King's Horseman, which was first performed in 1976.
One prominent chief is to commit death tonight.
Commit death?
Well, obviously he means murder.
Following the military coup in 1966, Wole Soyinka secretly met with Chukwuemeka Ojukwu, the military governor of eastern Nigeria, in an effort to avert the Nigerian Civil War. He was later arrested by federal authorities and imprisoned for 22 months as the civil war ensued between the federal government of Nigeria and the secessionist state of Biafra. He wrote a significant body of poems and notes criticizing the Nigerian government while in prison. This period of his life was chronicled in a new film, The Man Died, directed by Awam Ankpa.
I have a message that could end this war and bring about peace. The group that I represent, all we want for you to do is to call a halt to the fire.
We will not allow him to destabilize our nation.
Yes, sir.
The regime wants him silenced with nothing traced to us.
But that will require placing a hold on secession.
Yes.
And
yes.
That is the sticky point, Wole.
You should be in class teaching. Why are you always disturbing the peace of the land? The last time you held up a radio station with a gun.
Hey, stop that.
Now you are in bed with Ojukwu. Why? Supporting the evils against this nation does not look like a decision an intelligent Yoruba man like you should make.
Because when a people have been subjected to a degree of inhuman violation for which there's no other word but genocide, I believe very strongly that they have a right to seek an identity apart from their aggressors.
The 2-hour film is a historical testament of a nation told from the point of view of a literary icon who has interrogated the failings of the Nigerian state for over half a century. At an exclusive event, dignitaries gathered for the film premiere to commemorate Wole Soyinka's activism and time in prison.
I chose to do this film because of the contemporary nature of the birthing of Nigeria. especially after the last election, you saw that all the issues that were there in the 60s are still pertinent and have actually degenerated even further. And I felt the young people need to know the history of older people who have engaged this subject without looking at their commitment through the prism of ethnocentrism and tribalism. I wanted to know that it's one country and we are trying to live it as one country, and that the injustice is injustice whether it's in the north, east or south, and the core of what the young people are animated by is about justice. And let's look at those who committed themselves to justice and so they can continue to. And Professor Soyinka was the best example of that, and this was the best story to bring people together. A film is always half the statement. The audience will complete the other half. So I'm hoping the audience make what they want of it as a historical piece.
Tributes from across the world have continued to pour in for the foremost playwright, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in recognition of Soyinka's remarkable literary achievements, renamed the National Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, the Wole Soyinka Center for Culture and Creative Arts.
I'm thrilled, you know, and not only am I thrilled that they named the National Theatre after him, but trust me, his name carries a certain magic. That National Theatre is a beautiful building and a wasted resource. It is massive, it is well designed, it has so much potential. That name, I'm biased, but I will say it, the name has some magic attached to it, and I will bet within a few years that National Theatre is going to resurrect. So it's not only an honor for Wole Soyinka, but hopefully it will have a practical, positive outcome for the National Theatre. Dad, well done for making it to 90. I'm rooting for you to make it to 100 because it's going to be one hell of a party. To your health.
Well, I'd like to say happy birthday to Professor Wole Soyinka, an icon, an enigma, and somebody that Nigeria still doesn't fully understand.
Keep moving well. Congratulations to Prof. He has come a long way. 90 is not easy, and to be here at the premiere of The Man Died, it's a message to say that the man lived, because he will do another decade, I believe, and that's a new goal for us. What do we say?
Absolutely. We at Arise News, we want to wish Professor Wole
Soyinka a happy 90th birthday.
90 years of brilliance. The gathering also served as a fitting tribute to the foremost playwright's enduring influence on African literature and his lasting impact on the global literary landscape.
As if my presence fails to image what you were, mirrored in trustful faces, like the world, itself a trusting planet, an eternity that spins in human hands, as if childhood were out of fashion, as if.
Well, joining us now is the producer of The Man Died, Femi Odugbemi, the feature film inspired by the prison notes of Africa's first Nobel Laureate, Wole Soyinka. Good morning, Femi.
Good morning, Oji. Thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic work that you did there. I mean, I'd love to know what inspired this whole production. Why Wole Soyinka? Why did you pick his subject for your production?
Well, I think in this season of Professor Soyinka's 90th birthday, it's only it's a story that recommends itself. All of us are looking at what an inspiring life he's lived. But for me, it's even more important that he's, as an artist, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as an author, he has applied that creative impulse to the big questions of nation building. And I think the director, our director, Dr. Awam Ankpa, said it best in your report. There are so many conversations in nation building that I think our creative industry needs to be at the forefront of. And for us, Prof's birthday provides an amazing opportunity to make such a film.
Well, I think great idea to rename the National Theatre after Professor Wole Soyinka as part of the celebration. I don't think there's any other national theatre in Africa that is named after anyone. And it's appropriate that President Tinubu has named it Wole Soyinka Center for Arts and Culture. At least that reassures us in the industry that they will not turn the National Theatre into banking halls or, a venue for some other, unrelated industry purposes. But congratulations to you, Femi Odugbemi, and to our Mampa, for making this possible. The man died, the 27-month prison memoir of Professor Soyinka. But tell us about the film itself, the people who are in it, and then how you went about producing it and bringing it out to celebrate Professor Wole Soyinka at 90.
Well, I think it's clearly the kind of film that the community makes. And for me, that's really the most important thing, that there were such a lot of experience brought to this film. Whilst I produced, I believe that Professor Awamankpa brought an amazing vision to how this film could be made, and we brought the best of the skills within this country. I'm very proud that almost every part of this film was made in Nigeria by Nigerians. The writer, Bode Ashinyobi, I think did an incredible job to be able to adapt such a very deep memoir into screenplay. But beyond that, every single department technically were in Nigeria by Nigerians, and so the first thing was we represented as appropriate for someone who is a leader of our industry, of our culture, by bringing the best to this. In terms of the actors, I think Wole Ojo was absolutely amazing in this film. Wole Ojo, as you know, won the Best Actor at the MVCA in 2024. And I think he's definitely going to win another Best Actor prize for how he portrayed such a difficult, challenging role. But we surrounded him as well with people, I think, some of the best experienced and emerging actors in our country today. Norbert Young, Simisola Hassan, there's just so many people that I think came to this project and brought their best. Along with that, in the production, you have people like Jaman and Nikolakbo, Makin Soyinka as associate producers. So we really did, in my opinion, surround the vision of Dr. Awamankpa with the best that I think our industry had to offer.
Excellent. Now, in an earlier interview a few months back with This Day newspaper, you had said that history is important, opinion is free, fact sacred. And in telling the story of Nigeria, writing the future of Nigeria, was important to look back at our history, especially representing it properly. And I think that's why this, the movie or the project The Man Died is fantastic. Do you think, with regards to shaping or writing the future of Nigeria, what extent this movie would have on that? Especially because it's not exactly a biopic. It is more a telling of a story. It's a fictional work based on his memoirs. So to what extent do you think it would begin to tell the true story of what happened, especially the role that Professor Wole Soyinka played in the lifetime of this nation?
I think, one of the things that's clear to us is that there is a gap in the history, in the political history of our country in terms of how this generation understands it. There's also an important space for a lot of very difficult conversations in nation building, and that I think our creative industry can help us to bring to the forefront of national conversation. And I think that's what this film I hope advances. I hope there are many more films, many more plays that begin to pick bits and pieces of our history that are missing, so that we can make a whole for many of our young people who perhaps, out of ignorance, say things and do things that clearly betray a lack of grounding in the things that have gone in the past. But I hope that this film becomes a reference for who Professor Wole Soyinka is. I hope this is a profile in courage that inspires, many others to not only be part of a conversation from behind the keyboards of their laptop, but to understand that activism, resistance, defense of human rights all require a certain agency in the office of citizen, and the courage that would require, and the fact that there's a price to pay. I think, all of that is what we showcase in this film, in the person of Professor Wole Soyinka.
Okay, a couple of things. Good to see you. My great guy. Number one will be, has Prof seen the movie himself? What was his reaction like? I'd like you to share that. Secondly, let's talk about distribution, because this needs to go, viral. And are we planning another? Because this is just a speck of Prof's history. I think there also needs to be a movie that should be made of Prof's advocacy time with the June 12 struggle. That's another one. Probably if you want to make another sequel, that should be another one. So let's just talk about all of these things. Distribution, because it needs to go around the world. This is Prof. And secondly, what was his reaction when he saw it? He tried a little bit of a hint to talk about it when he had this little meet-up afternoon at the Metropolitan Club, but he didn't say much. He didn't want to give away a lot. So what was the reaction when he saw it, and possibility of a sequel?
I wish Dr. Awamankpa, the director, was here to answer that question, because he's really the one who lives and breathes with Professor Wole Soyinka. They both teach at the New York University, Abu Dhabi, and it's really a question I'd be coy to answer, because I'm not sure if Prof has actually will actually divulge that. I am aware that he is very aware of this project. He's very supportive of this project. He was very helpful with guiding, the authenticity of how this is scripted. So I am very glad that he gave us all that support. In terms of distribution, this is an impact film. It's very important that as many eyeballs as possible within Nigeria, within Africa, within the world have access to see this film. We want to take this film not just to theaters, but to universities, to spaces where people who are in the resistance movements are. We want people to see this film on streaming, as many spaces as possible. So yeah, we're making plans and finding distribution partners along that line.
All right, Femi, I'd like to ask, do you believe that Professor Wole Soyinka has been celebrated enough owing to his achievements? Recently, there's been calls for him to be, actually was the King of Ogun State who called for him to be given the GCON. Like I featured in my report, the National Theatre in Lagos has been renamed after him. What more would you like to see as an honor for Professor Wole Soyinka?
Well, it's an interesting question, because you yourself know that Professor is perhaps one who doesn't care very much about those symbolisms and symbolic gestures of naming things after him. But I think the greatest way to honor him is to honor his journey in the hearts of young people, the things, for them to understand the things that he holds dear, the things that he spent his life pursuing, the expansion of knowledge, the honor of culture, his spirituality, his capacity for his creativity to address, issues of human rights, issues, of humanism. I think his goal and his life has been more about changing the world, impacting people. And long after he's gone, I feel he has secured his legacy in that respect, in that it's going to be very hard in this world to have conversations surrounding the value of human life, justice, without a reference, not just to his writings, but to his activism. I think it's important to understand that Professor Wole Soyinka has lived a life of risks where he has had skin in the game. He's had opportunity to benefit from his privileged background and has chosen to constantly side on, to constantly be found on the side of truth. I think those are the real legacy for anyone, and I am happy that we are celebrating him in this season and providing those gestures to let him know that. But I think the more important thing is that we all understand what it truly is about, and that Nigeria changes in the course of it.
Absolutely. Well, Femi, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show this morning, and we look forward to more production from you.
Thank you very much
indeed. All right. Dr. Abati, Rufai.
Well, clearly, Femi Odugbemi has spoken well. The man died, but the man lives.
Yes.
And we wish him that he will live even longer than now. I would have loved Femi Odugbemi and I to also talk about the National Theatre, because I think what the government has done, is instructive. But in any case, there will be another opportunity to talk about the National Theatre. You asked the question whether he has been honored enough.
Yeah.
Look, Wole Soyinka is already in the pantheon of the greats in world literature, in activism, in the struggle for humanism. So there is no additional honor that will be too much for him, or that will be too... Look, the first Nigerian to win the Nobel Prize in literature. So he's a world citizen, and it's bigger than, the games we play in Nigeria with all those small boys, abusing him, and I've seen them, all these badly brought up children on Twitter, or is it X that is called now, making snide comments about Professor Wole Soyinka. He's above that. He's global. He's great. He's a legend. He's an icon. And we celebrate him.
Yes, it's very instructive to note that, this film features the part of Wole Soyinka's life where he actually, stood for Biafra. Rufai.
So it was a very interesting, and that's why I was also calling for another word, because you see, over the years in history, Wole Soyinka has been somebody that his convictions has always been the same. And that's why he's also gotten a lot of blowback recently, because people are now saying this is the Wole Soyinka we used to know based on his convictions. I do not support people attacking him or abusing because of the national treasure, but people have a right to disagree with some of the convictions, especially with the last election, which we cannot deceive ourselves. All right? So the truth has to be said. People have a right to disagree with some of the things he espoused in the last elections, because in the prison notes of the man died, Wole Soyinka took it upon himself at first to be able to be a voice to correct the anomalies at first that was going on in the Western region. The snare up that was happening between your Akitola and Awolowo, which the Western region had become the Wild Wild West. And we all remember the incident at the radio station. It was because of his convictions. And also, when war was about to break out, Wole Soyinka took it upon himself to reach across both sides, to be able to say, okay, let reason prevail. The inhumanity perpetrated against the Igbos should not continue. And it got him into a lot of problems. But he was dogged. He came out of that, continued still believing in the Nigerian educational system, continued to do his work as a lecturer to build the next generation, leading up to the 80s when he got the Nobel Prize and all of that. But soon, after I got the Nobel Prize, he had to also continue the fight against military tyranny, which anyway he had continued as the military came in. And we all know how it climaxed in June 1993. After those elections, and we all know the point Wole Soyinka stood with. So it was always about his convictions and what was constantly fighting for the right cause. Elections were annulled. People were not happy about it. I mean, there's a big memoir coming out very soon as regards to the incidents of June 12th. It's going to be a side of the story of a big dramatic personnel, and it's going to come out before the end of the year. And Wole Soyinka stood for that. And that's why a lot of people are looking at, we saw inhumanity being perpetrated in the last election, and we saw the position of Wole Soyinka too. I too disagree with him, but my disagreement will never make me mitigate the immense contribution he has. And I respect Prof. And I can say some level of familiarity and closeness to him. I've had many dinners with Prof. I've sat down with Prof in my own private moments, and I respect what he stands for. He's a man of a lot of those great convictions. And I feel his story has never been told enough. There are many aspects of his life that are still being told. And I'd like to give due recognition to Professor Awam Akpan that took this upon himself, to be able to tell the story, with the great work he's doing in the New York University and all of that. And some other people, that call the Wole Soyinka kids, Wole Soyinka, like they call them fondly, the likes of, Dr. Odugbemi, German, and a couple of other people, that are around him. Because these are the people that, constantly engage with Prof and put his messages out there. Because it was a lot of effort by Professor Awam. And funding this, you don't want to know what they also went through, because I knew what was going on as regards, and kudos to Femi that just left here and all of that. So Prof definitely has made a great mark in Nigeria's history. And I do not subscribe to all the shenanigans around him, but on many things also I disagree with him. Like a lot of people have disagreed with him, but I respect him and I do his heart for him. And I say any recognition given to Prof is very well respected. I mean, cheers to a lot of red wine to him, Like some people were telling me that, part of the things Prof, I think I was talking to Professor OjyOkpe, one of also Profs there that was saying, Prof was really larger than life to them when he was a lecturer, a young lecturer then in Badon, and he really encouraged a lot of them, and he taught them a lot of, great sense of activism. That's who Prof was.
Absolutely.
And who Prof will continue to be to all of us.
Well said, Rufai. I mean, while, making my report, I was stunned about the level of achievement Professor Wole Soyinka has in terms of even just nation building.
Absolutely.
And it's such a shame that, history was removed from our curriculum. And I think that is one of the reasons the young people of Nigeria, are not very familiar with, some of his achievements. When I read comments online, I see that a lot of people are not very familiar with Professor Wole Soyinka's achievements. So it's good for, filmmakers and, leaders of thought to continue to educate our young people about great people like Professor Wole Soyinka.
Absolutely. The man dies in him who keeps silent in the face of tyranny. I believe that what you said, Oji, is just spot on, and I was going to speak to that. And that's the reason why I asked the question around hope, the extent to which this film will begin to reshape the mindset, especially of young people. Sometimes you are loath to blame them for speaking the way they speak, because it is due to the fact that we do not know history. We are not students of history largely in Nigeria. All we see is the present. And a lot of times, the people who ought to be celebrated, who ought to be praised, this man in fighting for this nation went to jail. And this is part of the memoirs from his prison time, in terms of the man died. And so when you think of the efforts made by people of his generation, then we must praise the efforts of these people of his generation and continue to, shall I say, reward or honor them in terms of the footprints they made in the sands of time. What we should then be speaking to our young people is, what are you yourself doing, except being, beyond being a keypad warrior, to also ensure that you are also putting in, you make footprints in the sands of time in Nigeria. What are we doing today? They've done their own. They've done their past. Professor Wole Soyinka has paid his dues. He's done his part. What are we doing now in the future? We must never forget the sacrifices of heroes past in our today because of what's happening today. And that's why we must have more efforts like this, projects like this, and kudos to the team behind The Man Died, but even have many more histories. We talked about when the story of Funmilayo Ransom Kuti was told as well. We need these creatively told stories so that people who might not pick up a book to read would watch and actually understand what the history and how we got to where we are today as Nigeria, and the people who actually fought for the soul of this nation.
Fantastic.
Happy birthday, Professor Wole Soyinka.
Very well said, Ayo. Absolutely. Well, we at Arise News would like to congratulate Professor Wole Soyinka at 90. Happy birthday, Professor Wole Soyinka.